We'll jump into today's episode right after this announcement. For over 13 years, something remarkable has been happening. Rural hospitals and other small healthcare organizations that have partnered with Capstone have been achieving results and forming workplace cultures that even we are blown away by. It is truly a game changer when rural hospitals are the provider of choice and employer of choice so they can keep care local and margins strong. Far more healthcare organizations need to experience what's possible. That's why we're stepping forward in a bigger way, expanding our team of experts, expanding our capabilities by adding a strategic planning division to expand our ability to help even more rural hospitals and other healthcare organizations in 2026 and beyond. Capstone will continue to be the partner that small healthcare organizations can count on to meet them where they're at and guide them towards a stronger future. You can learn more at capstoneleadership.net.
I think we're probably one of the only search firms today that still goes on site to meet with our clients, and that we do a full site visit and we ask it to be treated as if we're the physician coming to interview so that we know what the process is. We can outline that process to the physician. They have the expectation of who they're going to meet with, what hotel they're going to stay at. So whether you're using a search firm or not, it's important for your organization to also outline that to the candidate and to make sure that they know what they're walking into during that interview process.
Welcome to Culture Change RX, the podcast for healthcare professionals that are committed to creating a thriving workplace culture, improving the experiences of employees and patients, and ultimately unlocking their organization's next level of potential. I'm Sue Tetzlaff, your host and co-founder of Capstone Leadership Solutions. Join me and my insightful guests each week as we share actionable insights for navigating the crucial people side of the business of healthcare. Subscribe now for a weekly dose of Culture Change RX. Now let's dive into this week's conversation where culture change takes center stage.
So glad you're here for another episode of Culture Change RX. It is me, Sue Tetzlaff, co-founder of Capstone Leadership Solutions and host of the podcast. And today I have an episode that includes a guest, and I love having a guest in the studio. Today it is Shannon, and we're going to have a conversation today about provider recruitment. In particular, as you know, we love rural healthcare. And so we're going to talk specifically about recruiting providers to rural healthcare organizations. So Shannon, welcome to the show. And we'll start with an introduction of you as well as your company.
Great. Thank you very much, Sue. I'm so pleased to be here today. My name's Shannon McKay. I'm with Adkison Search. And Adkison Search is an executive and provider recruitment firm. We're based in Bloomington, Illinois, and we do specialize in rural healthcare as well. So it's a great topic for us today. I'll share a little bit about Adkison, that we actually were founded in 2001. And Michelle Houchin and I are the current owners of Adkison Search. We joined the original founder, Billy Adkison, in 2001, became partners in 2006, and bought the company from him in 2011. So as we have moved forward, we've grown from doing provider recruitment and executive search, as well as a niche area now also into supply chain for healthcare organizations. We're really founded on our Midwest values, working in the rural locations. We feel that we're both from rural locations, and our team, a lot of our team members and our recruiters, we all grew up in towns that are like less than 8,000 people. And it has really been just a rewarding experience to be able to help our clients working with federally qualified health centers, critical access hospitals, and other small communities find the best people.
That's, just reminds me how much we have in common. And I can't believe I hadn't met you sooner in my career, because the Midwest values, the rural upbringing, the passion for rural, and making sure healthcare is strong there. And it takes great providers to do that. So I'm so glad to have met you and so glad to have you on the show. Thanks for being here, Shannon. Let's start with a question about effective strategies for recruiting providers into rural areas. We know rural's different. We know that is true when it comes to culture change and leadership and provider recruitment. So, what are some things that in all these years of experience working with rural areas that really have been strategies that work for recruiting providers there?
Sure. So, first of all, everybody today would probably say, yes, I want to recruit a primary care provider, whether it's a city or whether it's rural. Everybody needs more primary care providers and probably in OBGYNs as well. So, in today's market of where you're at within recruiting to a rural location, we have to find someone that is truly passionate about that community. It's not about coming in and saying, I'm just going to come in and work and see the patient and how much money am I going to make? It's about who is going to be a long term strategy.
Mhm.
So, what we do is, first of all, if we're open to residents, we're going to look for rural training programs and make sure that we're in contact with every rural training program and the residents that are finishing. Those people we know want to be in the location of a smaller community, and typically they grew up in the small communities and they want to practice the full scope of medicine. That's our number one place to go find residents. But we also do recruit for practicing physicians, and it's maybe somebody that is 3 years right out of residency that went to the big city and they thought, oh my gosh, this is going to be so great. And what they found out is it's not necessarily the lifestyle they were looking for. So it just takes additional time to reach out to those people and to be very active in that recruiting. Job boards do not work. Mass emailing doesn't work. Nothing works alone. It's about calling, emailing, texting, building relationships, really getting a hold of every physician that meets that initial criteria and then narrowing it down to a pool that you can actually reach. So if we're going to recruit, the first step is, looking at those programs and then looking at wheel states. So if we're going to recruit to Michigan, we're going to start in Michigan and then we're going to branch out to the surrounding states and start looking at Wisconsin and Minnesota and Illinois. And those are our target people. We have phone numbers and we have addresses and we have everything that you can do along with social media today, finding candidates even on Instagram. We have recruited over the past year. We've found physicians by going to their Instagram and saying, hey, we have an opportunity in this location in rural Michigan. Would this be a good fit? Let's talk.
That's probably changed since 2001.
Yes. It's very active.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people today have gotten away from being active in their recruiting and they rely on, I'm going to, we used to say like post and pray. I'm going to post an opportunity and hope that somebody responds. And to be successful, it's a 24-hour job that you're reaching out and contacting people and available when they are available to talk and finding out what those hot buttons are. So I think that that's the way to engage them first is through all that very active sourcing. But then it comes down to having the conversation with an individual of why do they want to be in a rural location and getting them to understand that you have a lower cost of living in a rural location. So you need to be able to sell that to your candidates that it's typically a lower cost of living to live in a small town than it is a big city. You're also going to have a much greater community impact. And if you're really into providing care and making an impact on the community, which we hope all physicians are, you're going to make a much bigger impact on a small community than what you're going to in a large city. Some of our physicians we look at like, wow, you're the big fish in the small sea when you go to a small town.
Absolutely. Yeah. I was telling you earlier, Shannon, that my husband is a physician. And so I've watched that play out in our small community as we go to the county fair and people are like, Dr. T, you delivered me. So you can't go to a public event and not, or even the grocery store and not run into people that know he's the big fish in the small pond, right?
right?
Yeah.
And they have to want that. So
Mhm.
what we do to make sure that people want that, it's spending a lot of time with them, hours on the phone before they're even presented to a hospital or presented to a federally qualified health center. So if your team is recruiting, you also want to spend hours with them. It's not just, oh, I got a CV and I'm going to call them, bring them in for an interview and hire them. It's really engaging and thoroughly vetting them and asking questions and making sure the answers are consistent every time you ask because they tell you
Mm.
what you want to hear.
Mhm.
And so you have to repeat questions over and over and again. Are you ready to sign? Are you ready to make a commitment? Are you looking at anything else? You know, if you talk to a physician that is looking at both, you say, okay, so do you have any other interviews? Do you have any other offers? Oh, well, people don't want to share it. And you're like, why? If
Yeah.
they tell you that they're also looking in Detroit, but then they're going to look in a smaller community in Michigan. Why? Why? They're
Mhm.
not the same. So ask
Mm-mm.
them why.
Mhm.
And that will help you decide, are they really a good fit for my organization? Or do I need to pass and find somebody who is not just looking for the money, right? Maybe there's
Mhm.
more money in the rural location than in Detroit, but they don't
Mhm.
have a passion for the mission or the reason to be there. And identify that by asking those questions and really engaging them every single conversation.
Pausing here to get healthcare executives excited about Capstone's 14th annual Healthcare Executive Forum. Many small and rural healthcare organizations are operating under conditions that naturally strain margins, workforce stability, and long term competitiveness. Strength today requires more than perseverance, it requires intentional design and doing. And that's why the focus of our Healthcare Executive Forum this year is on designing the future. It's all about where strategic clarity meets execution certainty. This isn't just another conference or networking event. This is where rural healthcare executives learn how to lead their organizations to true organizational vitality. If your plan or your ability to execute it is in question, if progress feels incremental instead of transformational, it may be time for a trajectory changing strategic period. Be a leader in rural healthcare's new era, the era of organizational vitality. Register now and bring your executive team. It is true that the next 3 years may be the most defining period your organization has faced in decades. Visit capstoneleadership.net and click on upcoming events. See you in June in Madison. I was thinking too is that when you're really trying to find a beautiful match for the organization and the practitioner, I used to get this comment a lot when I would tell, kind of lay people out there in the world that, I work in rural healthcare and whatever. And they talk maybe about, do bad doctors go there to hide? Like, is that where all is that easy for bad doctors to go find and go work in these small areas? And is the quality of care lower because of that? And I'm like, the opposite is true because bad doctors can't hide in a small
Exactly.
community, whether it's as a citizen, out in the community, or if as a provider, is like, it takes no time at all for the community to find out. So you got to find all this out before they say yes and move there. And you've got that problem on your hand. But you can't hide in a small community or medical staff with, if the behaviors and the quality of care isn't there. So I think that makes it actually better in small communities for the types of people that actually go there, because the bad ones can't thrive there. They just won't.
No,
Mm-mm.
they will not succeed.
No.
And their patients and the community will know it right away. And
Mhm.
the worst thing you can do for a small community is bring in a bad physician. I mean, the patients get so frustrated with having turnover. So the retention
Mm.
of bringing that physician in is truly key for the success of the organization.
Mhm.
You know, if
Yeah.
somebody comes in just for an income guarantee that they're going to get for 2 years and they leave, the patients start to get to the point of like, what is happening? You know, they do not
Mhm.
want to see another doctor every 2 years.
No, that's so true, isn't it? Again, my husband in practice for 43 years, some of those patients have been his patients since the beginning. They like to have that continuity of care and that relationship that's long term and not reestablish that every couple of years for sure.
Right,
Yeah.
absolutely. And a key piece of that too, to make sure that the retention is there with the physicians, is a significant other. So part of that
Mm,
interviewing process when you're talking to the physician, it's also to talk to their significant other. What is important to that significant other? Is the spouse a traveling entrepreneur who needs an international airport? It's not going to
mm,
work. Are
mhm,
they do they have a spouse that wants to be at the big city shopping and have every store accessible to them and a variety of restaurants and food every night? That's not going to work. So it's determining that from the beginning before you even invest in an interview, talking to the significant other and bringing them. And people are hesitant to do it because they think that they're too invasive by talking to the significant other. But we have found the opposite. Many
mm,
times the significant other's like, "Oh my gosh, thank you for including me."
mhm,
Because I mean, as you know, Sue, probably by being the spouse of a physician, if they
mhm,
just go off, they're just talking about the practice and the physician side of it and the patients and what they're going to do in the practice. But their significant other or spouse over here has a whole different life of things that they want to do and be able to enjoy and to involve their family in. So we do that. We talk to the spouse, we may talk to parents that are going to relocate with their children. We've even spoken to their kids. So if you had a teenager, and Sue and I talked about hockey, I mean, if we were going to relocate somewhere that did not have hockey,
mhm,
is the physician going to relocate? The physician may not even think of that, but the significant other will. Like,
mhm,
what is important to my children?
mhm,
And if they want an all-star gymnastics team or hockey team or lacrosse, whatever that might be for that family, it needs to be available in the community and accessible, or they're not coming, or they're
mhm.
going to come and then not be happy.
Yeah, it's like a community fit as much as it is a practice fit, for sure, when you're talking about rural recruitment. I'm sure you find the same when it comes to recruiting executives, just like you do providers, that it really is about that community fit as well. And I love that you mentioned the rural residency programs. I'm so glad to see more of those in Michigan when Central Michigan University started their rural program for providers. I really love knowing that that's out there and available and that it's really taking people from rural that want to be in healthcare and really putting them in a setting that's promoting that throughout their education and their experiences. So what a great place for your organization to have relationships with those programs for sure.
We just need more of them.
Mhm.
We need
Yeah.
more of them. There's just not enough of the rural programs. There's not enough providers overall. They
Mhm.
are looking for, in addition to trying to bring them in to be part of the community, the physicians today, compared to your husband's practice, they don't want to work as much. They want
Mm.
the family time. They call it the work life balance. But I always ask everybody, what is that work life balance for you? What does that
Mhm.
mean to you? For
Mm.
some people, it just means I'm going to work 5 days a week, 10-hour days. And when I go home, I don't want to take work with me. For others, we had a physician who really only wanted to work 3 days a week and still make at the top of the income for a family medicine provider, working 3 days a week. And we thought, oh my gosh, it went from 5 days, or it went to even taking call, being available 7 days to 5 days, to where 3 years ago I would have said 4 days. And now, just at the end of 2025, we were starting to hear people talk about 3 days a week
Mm.
of
Wow.
patient care. And, for most people, and you have to educate the physician. If you don't see patients, nobody's making money. The
Mhm.
hospital's not making money. The group's not making money. Therefore, you are not making money.
Mhm. Yeah. And it really changes, like, it's not like FTEs, full-time equivalent, as far as the number of bodies you need to care for the number of patients that need care in the community. It really depends on how much they want to work, the scope of practice they want to work. And so you're trying to like fit all the pieces in a puzzle to try to make it all fit and work out. And that's what the hospitals are trying to do when they're recruiting, or the clinics are trying to do when they're recruiting, is make sure those patient care needs are met with the providers that they have. And it seems like the equation is changing over time when you're talking about 7 days with call, 5 days, and now 3 days. Yeah.
And then, so we've already have a physician shortage. We all know that. And
Mm-hmm.
now coupled with that, it's not just about the number of physicians, it's about that time. That for
Mm-hmm.
one physician, we now need 2 physicians. And if you look at in some areas where there's academics, so you've got inpatient, outpatient, and academics, you have the triad of one person, or maybe more of the rural area, maybe the nursing home piece of it's
Mm-hmm.
more relevant. So now
Mm-hmm.
you have one person doing nursing home, one person doing hospital, and one person doing outpatient. And then if there's an academic involvement, today everybody wants to be more siloed. I'm only
Mm-hmm.
doing outpatient, or I'm only doing inpatient, or I'm only going to be in academic medicine, or I'm only going to work in the nursing home.
Mm-hmm.
This is a even more bigger
Yeah.
challenge.
Yeah. You're really speaking to the things that have changed. You've been in this business for a long time, and I've been in rural healthcare for over 30 years myself. And so we definitely have seen a lot of things change. And what you're really speaking to is some of the things that we're seeing change, definitely from when I was early in my career as a nurse and a leader in healthcare, is the types of practice and the expectations of practice that providers have. And it's just life does change, right? Times do change, and we have to keep up with them. And there's really no thinking it's good or bad or liking or disliking. It kind of just is what it is, right?
Right. And I think it's to educate, though. Maybe a piece of that is we need to educate our population. We need to educate the patients as well about the provider just as much as we're recruiting, as we're recruiting, and also educating the provider about the patient population and what they expect. So it
Mm,
all comes down to, again, education and communication with both sides, that perhaps our patients don't understand why it's so hard to get providers. They don't understand why it takes so long to get in. And as
mhm,
an organization in a smaller community, maybe there's more opportunity there to provide that knowledge to the general patient population.
mhm. Yeah, or things like, it's not new now, but the hospitalist programs. It used to be that the primary care providers did the outpatient work, and then if their patient was in the inpatient setting, they saw them there too, right? So they had that familiar face on the outpatient side as well as the inpatient. And then when that changed, that was a big change for our community members to realize that that was not the person that was going to take care of them any longer on the inpatient side. And as times change, the patient population has to understand and be educated and change with that too. And they can want all they want, but it may not be what they get when it comes to that.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. What else might have changed in the last 5 or so years? What kind of things? You mentioned technology and how you're interacting with candidates. You're talking about the kinds of practice opportunities that candidates want. What else might be a little different in recent years?
Well, I think that the culture is more important today than ever, to be able to bring in the physician that does match the culture of the organization itself, not just the community, but every organization has their own culture. So Sue's, your company does that, right? And matching all of the
Mm-hmm.
cultures and making sure that you have a good system in place for longevity and
Mm-hmm.
cohesiveness and team. And how do we look for that when we're recruiting for a physician can be a challenge. And it is looking at understanding your organization of who fits in the best based on who you are. Are you a very collaborative organization that has a lot of meetings, that pulls people in and wants feedback from the physicians? Or are you more of a top down to say the physicians are truly employees? There's both options there. And so when you're interviewing a physician, it's also about determining, are they more entrepreneurial and want to have a lot of autonomy and kind of just go run their practice? even though they're probably going to be employed because we don't have very many
Mm-hmm.
private practice positions
It's
anymore.
true.
But if they're going to be employed and all of the physicians work the exact same hours and the income's the same and the patient base is just divided up, you have to understand the physician that you're recruiting to know how they're going to operate and what their expectation is. And if it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't align, then you don't want to, it's probably not going to be a good fit.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
And that's, I think, a key aspect of recruiting when you're recruiting for yourselves. And even as for us, for a search firm, I think we're probably one of the only search firms today that still goes on site to meet with our clients, and that we do a full site visit and we ask it to be treated as if we're the physician coming to interview, so that we know what the process is. We can outline that process to the physician. They have the expectation of who they're going to meet with, what hotel they're going to stay at. So whether you're using a search firm or not, it's important for your organization to also outline that to the candidate and to make sure that they know what they're walking into during that interview process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love the story of one of our partner hospitals in northern Wisconsin that they were recruiting for an orthopedic surgeon, and the husband was the surgeon, the husband and wife came for the on-site visit, and they had their day-long visit of seeing the OR and seeing the practice, meeting some of the staff, going out in the community or whatever, and they admittedly thought it was just, they could sense this fantastic culture of teamwork and friendliness and collaboration and all of that, and they loved it. And in fact, they loved it so much that they thought it was all put on as a show. So they left after their day-long visit, and the next day they stayed in town an extra day. And the husband sent his wife back in again on her own to just poke around and see if it was really still true the next day, if she could sense. And it was. They ended up
That's good.
signing. They really didn't know if they could trust it because it was, just so spectacular. And they were so excited about it that they almost couldn't believe it was true. I love that story. That culture really did recruit this physician and his wife to that community. And it matters so much. Maybe not to every provider, but to that provider and his wife, it mattered a lot. That was a fit for them. Yeah.
Oh, that's a great story, and I love to hear that when they just it just happens sometimes, and
Yeah. Yeah.
it's the right place to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I was thinking about, I don't know a lot about the search world and recruitment world. I certainly have, been around it a bit as a healthcare executive for 22 years. We used different firms to help us recruit along the way for providers. But, when I think about it, I think of it as, and I don't know if this is a good analogy, Shannon, but I think about it like a real estate agent. There's the buyer's agent and then there's the seller's agent. And so one person's kind of representing the home that's being sold, and then the other real estate agent is representing the buyer, and they're trying to find a perfect match, right? Both are trying to find a perfect
Yes.
match. But in your scenario, you're kind of representing both, right? You're representing the client who's the hospital or the clinic or whatever provider that's got an opening to recruit a provider. And then you're also working the candidate. So you really need a relationship with both. And you really have to understand what both individual needs are. And you're really trying to find the match. So am I getting that right? That you're
You are
really
absolutely correct.
okay.
100%.
You're both the
100%.
buyer and the seller agent.
We are, and we often refer to ourselves as real estate agents, just in the
Oh.
manner of the way that we have to do business, and that the timing of when to talk to people. If you're recruiting for a physician and they're working all day, we work a lot at night, or we work a lot on the weekends, and we work throughout the week and setting up appointments and meetings. So even on that side of it, we refer to ourselves as real estate agents sometimes, to give people that understanding what that looks like.
Yeah.
But on the building the relationship, we do work for our client. So we work for the hospital. We work for the organization that hires Adkisson. We truly represent them. Whereas if we're an external extension of their team, we use their name. We say, I'm Shannon with Adkisson Search calling on behalf of XYZ Hospital. We use their logo. We use their photos that they may give us for our marketing material. And then when we're reaching out to the candidate, we're saying, I'm calling on behalf of, and I'm reaching out because we're interested in talking to you. But now it becomes, I really am interested in really getting to know this provider. Who are they? Why are they looking? What interests them? Are they going to be a good fit? So yes, we're genuinely interested in making sure now that we're engaged with the physician and that they do think the goal is that they do think we're representing them, because
Mm-hmm.
in the end, you are representing both. We're not going to place a candidate in an environment that they're not going to fit, because it's not
Mm-hmm.
going to do good for anybody. They're
Mm-hmm.
not going to stay, or they're not going to be happy. Therefore, the organization's not going to be happy either.
Mm-hmm.
And the best attestment that even just recently, we had a couple of testimonials from candidates, and just 2 testimonials that said the recruiter for Atkinson Search represented the organization, but you would have never known it because they represented me so well, and what they
Oh.
were really intrigued and interested in my best, and they had their eye on my
Mm-hmm.
best interest too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it is both sides.
Mhm. And I guess if, you get that type of relationship with a candidate and they aren't a good fit for that organization where you first engage them for a possible opportunity, they might be a great fit for the next one that you have, or something like that. So you
Yes.
got that relationship kind of in your pocket. Yeah.
Right. And we're so transparent with the facts. I just had a call this week with a client that said, we saw compensation information online and it was different than what we were provided. And so
Mhm.
the organization said, "Where did you see that at?" We're like, "Well," he said, "Was it a third party recruiter that posted it with different compensation expectations just to lure candidates in?" And we believe
Oh.
so. It was by another search firm representing. It didn't give their name specifically, but it was a small town, so we knew it was their
Mhm.
organization. And they're like, "See, that's part of the problem. You have to
Oh.
be transparent. We don't want to, have a bait and switch with anybody. If you're ever going to use a search firm, make sure that you're using a search firm that stands for their values and their integrity, and
Mhm.
that they're going to be honest, and they're
Mhm.
going to do the vetting of these candidates, and they're representing your organization well, because that can make or break your organization's reputation in general, let alone you may hire a bad fit."
I'm guessing that, once you have a relationship with an organization to help them with one search, that if that goes well, if they have another search, I'm guessing you have some pretty long-standing clients being in the business for a long time, high ethics and integrity and great results, particular rural. Would that be true that you mentioned you're kind of like part of their team, but I bet you that's not just a one and done deal, is it?
No, absolutely. We are partners, and we say once you're a client, you're always a client.
Mm,
You may not always have a need for a physician. That would be the goal, that the
exactly.
physicians stay. But when our clients have had a need, they typically come right back to us, and we take on a new search and help them again. Even if they don't have a need and they haven't reached out to us, if we've worked with someone and we come across like, "Oh, I'm from this location," we'll pick up the phone and call the CEO and let them know we've been in conversations. Do you have a need right now? And that's not the standard process. We're retained search, so we're hired by the organization for a specific need. But
Mhm.
those situations come up as well. One of our clients, not rural, that's a big system. We've worked with the Houston Methodist Hospital System since 2004.
Oh, wow.
They've been a
Yeah.
client. And to this day, we still have open searches it's always when it's hard, it needs extra attention. There may be something internal that causes difficulty recruiting, or it may be just that they want a breath, just a new perspective in their recruitment model, that they'll reach out to us and we'll recruit. And that's what our goal is for every client, is to keep them for a long term and become partners.
Yeah. Love that. Wow. How would people reach out to you or your organization if they have a need right now, or what they're doing right now isn't working to help them with any recruitment, whether it's executive or provider recruitment? How would they reach out to you or your organization?
So I prefer just to be called, but a lot of people don't necessarily always want to just pick up the phone and call. If you do want to call, our toll free number is 866 311-0000. Yes,
Oh,
4
wow.
zeros. That's correct. You also can email me at shannon@adkisonsearch.com, and that's ADKISSON search.com. You are also welcome to go to our website, and that's just the traditional www.adkisonconsultants.com.
Okay.
And we will always respond. I'm always happy to answer any questions. Again, Michelle Houchin and I, as the owners of Adkison Search, we're very proud of what we have built here and the longevity and success that we have had, and very passionate about what we do every day and the success of our rural communities.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for what you do. It is important to have partners like Atkinson Search on behalf of rural hospitals. A lot of times we don't have that, our own recruiters, we don't have that depth in our teams in HR or otherwise to be able to recruit. And so having help from experts like yourself helps small and rural healthcare organizations be able to fulfill their missions. Very hard to do that without providers needed to do that work. So thank you for your expertise in this area and your passion for rural. Of course, that is something that we certainly have in common. So thanks for being here. Any parting words or comments or things you wanted to say to the audience before we wrap up today, Shannon?
I just thank you very much for the opportunity and to be part of your podcast. And if there's anything in the future, that questions that people have regarding recruitment, we're happy just to answer questions and be able to help people walk through their recruitment process and get to know everyone.
Wonderful. Thanks for being here, Shannon. And thank you again to our listeners for being here for another weekly episode of Culture Change RX. Tune in each Wednesday for another episode and take care. Bye now.
Thanks for tuning in to Culture Change RX. If you found value in today's episode and you are a believer in fostering change in healthcare, join us in making a difference. Follow, rate, and review our podcast on your favorite platform. Share it with colleagues and your network. Together, we can make a lasting impact. Until next week, keep inspiring positive change.